to talk about your health. Living a primal lifestyle.
You know, we have Tom from Tampa on the phone. Hey, Tom. Good morning. It's bright and early now, huh?
Hey, Paige. Good. How you guys doing, Nico?
Doing great.
Good. Hey, your newsletter's outstanding, man. I'm telling you, man, it is outstanding. And so is the Primal Edge. I love that stuff. I'd never be without it. I mean, I've been on it now 3-4 months, man. I mean, it's just, I can't get over how good I feel.
Primal Edge is, people are raving about it. People who are trying it, they know because you can feel it.
Would not be without it.
Call now, toll free at 1-877-927-6648. Internationally at 727-445-1044. Now your hosts, Nico Haan and Paige Clarke.
Good morning, I'm Nico Haan. Welcome to Living a Primal Lifestyle, where we explore a return to a more balanced, natural, wild world.
So we can recover our natural health, our rights, and our freedoms. And I'm Paige Clarke.
And it's a beautiful morning in downtown Clearwater, Florida. It's 75 degrees and a little cloudy. We're going to have some rain this afternoon, which means it won't be quite as hot as it normally is.
That's right. Well, I'm ready for the fall. And if you have any questions for our show, please contact me, Paige, at TFNN.com.
Or me, Nico, at TFNN.com. And we're taking your phone calls at 877-927-6648. Welcome back.
Thank you. Yeah, you know, I actually did go on a little business, part pleasure trip up to Kentucky, and that's a beautiful part of the country.
Yes, it is.
But it was hot there, too. So,
Was it? Yeah.
So,
It's hot everywhere. In fact, they said it was the hottest month 3 months in a row or something like that. But I have a lot of sources that dispute that. Anyway, I wanted to go with this article, first of all, about our sugar industry.
And this has just hit the New York Times, hit the Daily Mail, how the sugar industry shifted to blame fat for heart disease instead of sugar, and there was a little underhanded dealings in that whole thing.
Yeah, the sugar industry paid scientists in the 1960s to play down the link between sugar and heart disease and promoted saturated fat as the culprit instead. Newly released historical documents now show. These documents are in the University of California, San Francisco, and published Monday in the JAMA Internal Medicine Journal.
JAMA is the Journal of American Medical Association. Well, we already know, as we've talked and shared with people on this show, that the chief, editor of the New England Journal of Medicine and so forth, many of these prestigious industry articles, people have come forward to say that the research published in these medical journals is no longer credible.
Yeah, it's kind of a perfect storm because we had, of course, the China study back in the 50s or 40s, whenever that was, and then the sugar industry jumped on board. And I guess everybody pretty much jumped on board. The heart surgeons, the prescription drug industry. Pretty much everybody promoted this whole thing during the 1950s, 1960s, into the 1970s, and even in the 80s, I guess.
Well, this is just huge, folks, because what it suggests is that 5 decades of research into the role of nutrition and heart disease, including many of today's dietary recommendations, may have been largely shaped by the sugar industry. We often say here on this show, we live in an upside-down world. So do a 180. Whatever they're telling you to do is what you need to do the opposite. And you got to start thinking for ourselves, because our new health care is self-care and becoming self-aware of what the truth is. Yeah,
the documents show that a trade group called the Sugar Research Foundation, known today as the Sugar Association, paid 3 Harvard scientists the equivalent of about $50,000 in today's dollars to publish a 1967 review of research on sugar, fat, and heart disease.
And you know what? These studies were used, and the reviews were handpicked by the sugar group. And they were published in the prestigious New England Journal of Medicine, and they minimized the link between sugar and heart health and kind of cast the focus onto the role of saturated fat. This is just so disturbing.
Yeah.
And, you know, millions of people have suffered ill health as a result. I was reading another article where it was just really kind of a wink-wink thing. They were saying, make sure you give us what we want for this.
Wow.
And when you look at the dollars, it really is pittance now. I wonder how much they have to get now to do this stuff.
Wow, yeah. Well, last year there was an article in the New York Times that revealed that Coca-Cola, the world's largest producer of sugary beverages, have provided millions of dollars in funding to researchers who sought to play down the link between sugary drinks and obesity.
Well, let's talk about that. Many times you see our registered dietitians, which, you know, according to traditional medicine, are the people licensed to provide nutritional advice. If you look at all of their trade shows, they're sponsored by Cokes and Pepsis and Frito-Lay. So you really wonder what's going on as our nutritional recommendations are being tainted by these sleight of hand, unethical industry approaches. It's just really disturbing, and it really points to the fact that, yes, you really can get much better information through the public consciousness.
And these associations also come down on people who start giving out the truth. Mm-hmm. So there's many instances of people being downplayed in, North Carolina, I think it was. There was one dietitian there who was talking about obesity and talking about diabetes and that this is not the way to go, and then they shut her down.
Oh, they absolutely do. If anything doesn't fit their agenda, then it gets slighted. And it's interesting because these Harvard scientists and the sugar executives with whom this collaboration happened, they're no longer alive, but one of the scientists who was paid by the sugar industry was Dr. Mark Hegstad, and he went on to become the head of nutrition at the United States Department of Agriculture, which in 1977, he helped draft the forerunner to the federal government's dietary guidelines.
You know, the industry said itself, it said, should have exercised greater transparency in all the research activities. The Sugar Association statement said. Even so, it defended the industry-funded research as playing an important informative role in the scientific debate. This is kind of like the debate between climate change and is it getting colder? You know, we're saying one thing, the other people are saying the other thing. And this is, you know, they want to keep the debate going because they don't want the truth to come out.
Well, here you go. The revelations are important because the debate about the relative harm of sugar and saturated fat continues today. So we still have this concern about what the real, you know, which the real culprit is, and it just bothers me when I hear people. I still see things that are recommending, oh, watch your saturated fat.
Well, they even say it was a very smart thing that the sugar industry did because the review paper, especially if you get them published in a very prominent journal, tend to shape the overall scientific discussion.
Well, look
so they say it's smart that they lied.
Yeah, they say it's smart because
it's kind of like the politics that's happening. One side lies, the other side lies. It doesn't really matter that they're lying as long as we get this untruth out there so you can keep hearing it.
It's crazy. It is so crazy. And yet look at the devastation it's caused in the health of people worldwide as people adopted a low-fat diet in favor of these non-fat and fake fat foods, high sugar content, and you know, really we have this obesity and chronic disease crisis going on worldwide.
Yeah, and this the study that the Sugar Foundation, Research Foundation did was not disclosed until 1984. So that was the first heart research project from 1965 to 1966 is that the one we're talking about. And it wasn't until 1984 that they said, well, no, that was completely wrong.
Right.
Today we are urged to limit our sugar intake as much as possible. Women should have no more than 25 grams, that's 6 teaspoons of sugar per day. That's about less than a can of Coca-Cola. So if you're drinking those sodas still, even the diet sodas, of course, may be even worse.
I have to ask a question. Is there really anybody out there that still drinks
Please give us a call.
Soda? I want to know. Is there really anybody that can even just, oh, wow, Al just raised his hand. Al, we're going to have to work on you, buddy. We got to take a short break.
Yeah. Remember my Health Signals newsletter, folks? It's on the wire right now, all about
Hot stuff
marijuana.
there.
And we got a great one coming up next week. And also give us a call, 877-927-6648.
Welcome back to Living a Primal Lifestyle. So what happened when the sugar industry started to skew information about the cause and effect of sugar on our health? It's just really floors me that this information came out. It was so blatant.
Yeah.
And so let's go back through a little bit of this information that you were sharing before the break. Really what we found out, today, we really are encouraged to limit our intake of refined sugar. Women to 25 grams, men to 36 grams, and I still think that may be way too much. Certainly, we'd rather get some of our sugar at least from unrefined sources, but to even
I think no sugar, I think from natural products. If you're going to eat a little fruit, you can get your sugar there. Mm-hmm. Vegetables have plenty of sugar in them, and we've eliminated most of the real ones that are like sugar, like the grains and cereals and things like that, even beans. Even though they have protein, they're still high in sugar, too.
Well, we know now that sugar, in peer-reviewed articles, show that sugar triggers insulin resistance. It lowers your good cholesterol and, creates that damaging ratio, and it causes inflammation in the arteries.
Mm-hmm. It certainly does. There was a study in 1966, according to the report, that Hickson was requesting additional drafts of the literature from Harvard. And by November 2nd, Hickson had approved a latest draft. And in his two-part review, he concluded the only change necessary to prevent heart disease was to reduce dietary fat intake.
So
this was key. Mm-hmm. This kept on going until the journal did not require conflict of interest disclosure until 1984. So they kept really promoting this thing until, they just kept it in the news. Mm-hmm. Kind of like politics does, and like the sugar industry does, and like the Coca-Cola industry does. Just put it in your face, keep putting it in your face. Whether it's true or not doesn't seem to matter, and really nobody's taking him to task for that.
Well, it really sounds like when he started this whole, this particular Vice President, John Hickson, what he was really trying to do, you can see the money.
Yeah.
Was on the table. Mm-hmm. The industries were coming in and saying, "We really got to take the focus off
and here's
this.
Some money for you."
Yeah, here, take your family on a trip.
The research is with us because if you look at those China studies, mm-hmm. then it's right there.
That's disturbing because kind of diverging here, the whole China study. So many people that support a plant-based diet, and I like to remind people that a Primal Lifestyle is also a plant-based diet. It's based on eating plants and eating animals that eat plants.
Yeah.
Right. But there are plants in there. A lot of these people really believe that the China study is a very valuable study. What are your thoughts?
It's not it's valuable in the sense that it debunks pretty much what the sugar industry was saying.
It debunks what the sugar industry was saying, or it supports?
Well, it supported it until it was revealed that it was a bogus study. Mm-hmm. So there you go. Yeah, it was promoted. The China study, they eat lots of rice, they eat lots of vegetables, they eat very little meat. Well, they don't eat that much rice. They eat a little bit of rice, and they did that because they were running out of animal food. And then what did they do to the rice? Most of the rice is old. Mm-hmm. They cooked it many days ahead of time. They let it set for a while. They kind of let it fester a while.
Which is what we know now. If you do eat some starches, it's better to cook them, and it creates that resistant starch.
Yeah, cook them twice maybe. Like cook them first and then fry them. There's a lot of things like that happen. And also, they ferment a lot of these things. So, their palate is completely different than a Western-style palate is concerned. So they've done a lot of things successfully, but it's nowhere near our food industry take on it.
Yeah.
That's the way I would
So getting
put it.
back to the studies, the China study, many of the studies that we see, and medical doctors will refer to peer-reviewed double-blind placebo studies and journal articles where we now know that even the chief editor of the New England Journal of Medicine came out and publicly stated that the research today is bought and paid for and can no longer be trusted. Interestingly, the journals did not require conflict of interest disclosure until 1984.
Yeah.
So really, we had a lot of information that was skewing results. So the Sugar Association paid very prestigious these Harvard scientists to publish the review focusing on saturated fat and cholesterol as the main cause of heart disease at the time when studies were starting to accumulate indicating that it was actually sugar.
Yeah, and when the manufacturers took out the fat, they added the sugar. So they didn't have both of them in there, thank God, because the both of them together is even worse.
That's really is the cause, yeah, exactly.
Then you're talking Dunkin' Donuts. Mm-hmm. Where you fry things in bad oil, you got the bad fat in there, and then, of course, you've got the sugar and you've got the dough and all those things. That's a nightmare in itself. That's a nightmare food.
Listen to this. For example, during this period of time, and this is kind of during our childhood.
Yeah.
My childhood, it was the whole information was skewed to how to prevent heart disease, and it focused on why don't you use margarine rather than butter? Mm-hmm. It's not nice to fool Mother Nature, right? Because it had less saturated fat. But now we know that margarine is full of trans fats, which causes heart disease and has nearly eradicated has been nearly eradicated from the U.S. Food supply.
And it's not just that. It was the Crisco oil. It was all these different oils that came into it and substituted, and that's when we had the low-fat industry come in. Mm-hmm. So not only did we get the sugar in, but now we replaced all the good fats that are in there. And we don't want them with sugar, that's for sure. But now you have bad fats and sugar There you go. That's a perfect storm in a sense. And our producer says Coca-Cola with dinner, that's it. He says better than with beer. Well, I beg to differ. I think probably a beer would be healthier.
Yeah,
I don't think, I'm not promoting either one to have with dinner. I think if you're going to have something, have a little tea or something like that.
There's just no place for these sodas. And what our bodies need when we drink and we really don't even need fruit juices. We can have fruit, but a lot of people substitute sodas for sugary. I call them dead juices
I can
because
give you
they've been
just a blanket
pasteurized.
statement. If you're taking any kind of sodas, that you're not going to be healthy. It's not going to get you to health. It's going to stop you from, no matter what else you're doing, that soda will stop you from being healthy, and you'll have little things that bother you all your life.
I have some practitioners who, and many of us that are getting busier and busier when we want to work with people, we're starting to actually interview people to see if they're willing to do the changes. You know, when I'm coaching someone, if I have questions, and I haven't quite gotten to this point, but I think it's a really good move. If someone is still drinking sodas, diet sodas, or even just regular sodas, you really need to dismiss them because they're not going to get a great result, like you said. Yeah,
that's for
scary.
sure. And then, you know, the switch is really that next we're
How
going to
do we eat to have a healthier heart?
Exactly, because we're talking about sugar impacting the heart, and of course now the studies have been buried for 20-some years. In 1984, it finally started coming out that sugar is bad for the heart. So just making the switch alone, just by getting off your sodas, probably is not enough. If you just want to take sugar out of your life, that's probably still not enough because there are other things there. And I think one of the things that we do here is promote the primal, ancestral, paleo-style diet. It's a good plan.
Primal living, too.
Yeah, it's a place to start from, and you really have to wrap your head around what actually this is. So we want to go over how to eat your way to a healthier heart.
Yes, and because the heart problems are often related to nutritional deficiencies, but, you know, just like other muscles in your body, your cardiac muscles need a constant supply of certain nutrients and their cofactors to operate efficiently. So when we get back from this break, we're going to talk about, you know, what are some of the nutritional deficiencies that impact your heart and which diets actually outperform other, perhaps, prescription drugs that are being tainted as what your heart needs. We know it's really nutrition.
And a good way to start your day is with the Primal Edge. So pick some Primal Edge up for $89 a month. You can be healthy, too. And welcome back to the show. We're talking about how to eat your way to a healthier heart. And before the break, you were really talking about that your cardiac muscles really need constant and consistent supply of certain nutrients and their cofactors to operate properly. Interesting part of this is that a lot of the energy that we get from the sun, from sunlight, is
important, like you said.
Yeah.
I mean, we're talking about eating primal foods, but we're talking about the primal lifestyle, getting out and being an outsider and getting some solar radiation. The ultraviolet radiation increases the nitric oxide release, which can direct more than half of your blood flow to your skin. And when your blood flow goes to the skin, we actually absorb the sun and we make cholesterol sulfate. Why cholesterol is so important, it's really the sulfation of it. And once that happens, the infrared radiation can help to structure the water. You're going to be hearing Nico and I talk a lot about this in the future. Structured water is so huge. The research of Gerald Pollack, the fourth phase of water, is that there really is another phase of water than what we've learned in science. And it's almost like a gel. Think of it almost like aloe gel. And that is the structured water is what we really are.
Makes sense to me.
And the sun is really important. The infrared radiation that we get from the sun is important in helping to restructure our bodies. When we don't get in the sun, we don't get that.
Right. And heart problems are often related to deficiency in our nutrition.
It sure is.
So chronic nutrition deficiency can lead to a number of heart problems such as cardiomyopathy.
Loss of elasticity in the heart muscle.
Yeah. And, of course, heart failure. Examples of these nutrients are CoQ10, magnesium, folate, B9, B12.
Vitamin K2, which we always talk about, which is the fat-soluble nutrient that helps activate the vitamin D, and it also keeps the calcium.
Yeah, and of course the animal-based omega-3 or algae-based is another part. So all of these nutrients play a role in keeping your mitochondria.
The mitochondria in your
DNA,
heart is what is really the energy source of our bodies, of our cells, and these. Also, what's important is the antioxidant polyphenols, which I like to explain to people that these are your colorful, rich-colored fruits and vegetables, particularly in the reds and the
Yeah,
purples.
and this is like an army of combatants going in there to help you get rid of all these
Inflammation and damage.
Yeah.
So that's why really that primal man who is going through the woods, sees a little bush of some dark-colored berries. They're not plentiful. He can't eat, 2 bowls of them.
Yeah, and the Dr. Marcola in this article that we're talking about, and he was talking to CNN about this, that the Mediterranean diet outperforms statins for heart health. So there's much more natural way. And originally, the Mediterranean diet was actually called a high-fat diet. We kind of disguise it these days because we still kind of have a little phobia about fat. We see people still picking up diet food because it has less fat in it, not because it has less carbohydrates in it.
I think that was a really interesting point in this article, that the Mediterranean diet that we're hearing is often skewed that way, and that's a really good point that you said. I think we still have this fat phobia. And
yeah, the Mediterranean populations were actually eating high fat for generations, one rich in full animal foods, and still experienced low rates of heart disease in the area that it's known for. So in the Mediterranean, around Italy and
homemade
Greece.
sausages, raw, full fat milk and cheese, eggs, and when they could be found, meats like lamb were commonly enjoyed. And, the Mediterranean people have been eating high-fat diets for generations.
Well, if you just look at Andrew Zimmer on the Bizarre Foods, and when he goes to these markets, and he has one of the usual local people that show him around, and they go to the markets, and what are they showing us? They're showing all kinds of parts of animals. They're showing us lots of fat, soluble things that you eat that make everything so good.
That's
and
right.
the sausages and things, we always talk about processed meat, that it's not really that good for you. But when you do it in the old traditional way, like they do it in Sicily or Italy or south of France or maybe even in Holland, where we don't have room for lots of animals and we have to confine them a little bit more. So we do things a different way. We feed them differently. We don't feed them the factory style. We feed them the best stuff we can.
And, something about the Mediterranean diet that everyone thinks of, what is the one thing you think about when you think about the Mediterranean diet? Olive oil, right?
Yeah.
And I think that today we lost touch with how we use that. I am sure that our ancestors were smart enough to know not to heat that oil to bubbling, but yet you still have people today that think, oh, Mediterranean diet, I think I'll saute my garlic and the olive oil is bubbling. That's not the way it was meant to be.
Well, it depends on the olive oil, too. If you have the real extra virgin olive oil, it can be heated a little higher than the other ones, so they knew what they could use it for.
I think they probably used the lard from animals to cook in, and then they drizzled their olive oil or added it as a finishing oil.
Yeah.
And I think
because
that's
of the taste.
Well, I think that's the way to use it today. I do get the benefits of olive oil and those monounsaturated fats, but I would certainly recommend not heating your food or sautéing things where you're heating to a bubble. I would use some of the more saturated fats to do that.
And it also says in the article with Dr. Mercola that the paleo diet also reduces the risk of heart disease. And of course we know that because we're talking about the nuts and the seeds and the olive oil. But he's talking about here why critics don't like paleo. His criticism largely surrounds the diet's restrictions of grains and dairy, the former of which are actually one of the key reasons paleo eating was healthier than the average American diet. They
Well,
don't
we can
like
certainly
that.
see there's a lot of industry attack on the paleo or primal diet. It's really removing that source of revenue that we see when we look at a grocery store and we look in between those aisles. You could really decrease floor space if we got rid of all those packaged
And one of the things
foods.
he mentioned in here that I like, in short, the keto paleo diet is unprocessed food, which means most grains and breads are out of the picture. Ditto for pasteurized dairy products. We don't mind dairy, but we don't like it pasteurized.
It's about proper sourcing and proper preparation. It needs to be from grass-fed cows that roam and have a natural diet, and it needs not to be pasteurized or homogenized. You're just not going to find that in grocery stores right now. You have to seek that out with your market.
Right, so I consider that the dairy industry is that packaged processed food. And that's where the cereals come in, and that's where all these things come in. And we eliminated those foods for specific reasons because we're so bombarded in our modern world with these things, we kind of have to eliminate that part just to kind of get even, I think.
Well, this is interesting, too, because you and I were talking about on the break. Dr. Mercola talks about, while a paleo-primal diet is in the right direction, many people misapply this strategy, and they end up running into trouble because they have a failure to appreciate the importance of avoiding excessive protein from lean sources, which you and I were discussing, that many of our tribal ancestors, they shunned the muscle meat. They were looking for the organs and the fatty part of the meat.
Yeah, Cordain, the guy who really
started the paleo diet.
Kind of started the paleo diet. There was a couple of people before him that also talked about the ancestral, but he really brought it to the forefront. And one of the things he always mentioned is that our ancestors were high on the fat. They carried the fat with them if they couldn't carry anything else. That was the organs and the fat were the most important part. Muscle meat was an afterthought. They could feed their dogs with that, and they could use it for different purposes. But basically, and if once you get the idea and start using these fats, you'll find out how liberating the whole process really is, that you don't get hungry anymore. The inflammation is gone. You feel really happy.
Yes, yeah. Remember, a primal diet is more focuses on good, healthy sources of healthy fats, moderate protein, and moderate vegetables and minimal fruits.
So when we get back, we'll talk a little bit more about the heart. Welcome back to the show, folks. On the TFNN.com website, you'll find a 2-minute hamstring sequence. This is a very important, if we're sitting all day, that promotes back problems. So doing this little 2-minute sequence is going to help you a lot. Of course, every 2 weeks we put on a new stretch here for you. So let's get back here. One of the things that we talk about, of course, the high fat content in the paleo primal style diet, very important, but we cannot forget about the rich color of the vegetables and fruits.
Yes, the power of pigment.
Yeah, because this is really what protects our heart.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because the rich color indicates antioxidant activity.
Okay.
And you and I were talking during the break, really pigment is it's a wavelength.
Right.
It's a wavelength of color, and it delivers certain powerful benefits.
Right.
And because it helps your body escape the free radical damage, and this controls the rate at which you age. And many of us may have some genetic SNPs that make aging happen faster than others, and certainly antioxidants and including these powerful foods can help balance that out and have proper gene expression.
Yeah, Dr. Mercola says keep in mind, in order to reap these benefits, you need to eat the whole fruit and not the fruit juice, which is simply too high in fructose. Excessive fructose is associated with insulin resistance and associated with heart or with health problems, including diabetes and heart disease.
So your antioxidants can be divided up into 3 major groups. The first group are the carotenoids, or the pre-vitamin A. They're found in plant foods, and they're just, they're very powerful. You can think of your carrots and things like this with the orange pigment.
Yeah.
The allele sulfides are what you're found in garlic and onions, very powerful. The phytochemical allicin is very powerful in helping us to fight free radical damage. And also polyphenols, which can be further broken down into other categories. One is called flavonoids, stilbenes, lignans, and phenolic acids. So there's a whole phytochemical world out there that can really help us stay healthy.
Yeah, and one of the things that it does, a recent study suggests that it has to do with the fact that the metabolism of flavonoids enhances the bioactivity in the endothelial cells. Which
the endothelium, or the lining of your arteries.
Yeah.
Correct.
So by getting this powerful stuff to enrich those linings, then you have a strong lining, means a happy cell, it means a healthy cell, which means what goes in and what goes out is determined by your food, and the body says, oh, this is not good, let's get rid of that, and processes what it needs to for our energy and to keep us healthy. So it's a fabulous system that we have here.
Well, there are certain foods that really exhibit a lot of power, and these flavonoids, specifically the anthocyanin-rich foods. These are fruits and berries with a blue, red, or dark purple color. Really have a lot of power. And also the citrus fruits are great, lemons and oranges. I think this is a perfect example of why we should eat the whole fruit, so we can really get these.
Well, a lot of the fruits and lots of the vegetables have a dark, really rich color outside, but not so much inside, which would give me an indication by the way you're talking about it, is that we need the skin just as much.
Yeah,
or
the
maybe
only
more.
problem is a lot of these things are heavily sprayed with pesticides. So we really need to make sure we're properly sourcing and properly preparing and washing the pesticides
point.
off.
Good point.
Take a good look at the Clean 15 and the Dirty Dozen and follow that as much as you can.
Yeah, even, our citrus, if you go to the original place where the citrus was born, most of it was in China. And they use these mostly as a condiment. They use the outer skin to spritz things to get that healthy spritz of stuff. The meat, not so much.
Well, there are super powerful essential oils, for example, in citrus, D-limonene, heavily researched for its protection in certain types of cancers, helps us to digest fats, and you don't get it by eating the fruit. It's actually in the skin. So you're exactly right, the skin. But let's talk about a couple of research studies that indicate how important antioxidants are.
Well, let me interject because I just got it on top of my mind. It's not written anywhere. All these ancient trade routes that were going on in Asia, coming from Europe, because Europe, of course, was way ahead as far as using the resources of the land, running out of resources, and now we have these trade routes going to India, going to China, Marco Polo. I mean, these people used a lot of energy to go halfway across the world
to get the spices and the cheese.
Exactly. So that's how important they thought it was.
And salt.
And
celery.
Yes.
Celery. That's
and
what
not
the word
just
celery.
any salt, because the salt is everywhere.
Right.
It's from the ancient seabeds.
Exactly.
And how did these people know this stuff? Because the people who lived there knew it, and they passed that on.
Oh, sure. Again, that traditional knowledge.
Yeah, sorry
of
to break in on
No,
that.
no, I like that. So just here's some thoughts. Here's some food for thought.
Okay.
Research published in the British Journal of Nutrition, a review of 14 different studies found that the intake of 6 classes of flavonoids that we mentioned earlier can significantly decrease your risk of heart disease. And they puzzled over how flavonoids help prevent heart disease, but one recent study suggests it has to do with the fact that the metabolism of flavonoids enhances their bioactivity in endothelial cells, which form the lining of your blood vessels. We brought this up earlier.
Yeah.
And it also helps to reduce the clumping of platelets in your blood. So platelet clumping is one potential precursor of heart attacks and angina.
So what I'm thinking, what I'm picturing is all these great colors that are in our fruits and vegetables are in there to attack things that aren't good for us and to really boost our bodies to what is good for us.
Well, and I think they're probably more significant than ever. And you mentioned that about vegetables, that we need the fiber to bind the toxins. It's always a balance of getting the good stuff in and getting the bad stuff out, and fruits and vegetables help fight that insult. We also know that polyphenols also inhibit vascular endothelial growth factor, which causes complications. And these are a factor in cardiovascular disease. And I want to bring it right back to another thing that many of you probably remember us sharing with you, is that human beings, somehow or another, the gene has switched off. Who knows? Maybe it was manipulated. So we do not produce our own vitamin C. And we are unique in that fruit bats, humans, and guinea pigs do not produce their own vitamin C. And those are the only species that actually have cardiovascular disease. That's a real powerful statement.
So could it be that our earth was so rich in vitamin C with the plants and everything that is in there that I guess nature says, well, it's so plentiful, we really don't need it.
It could be. It could be. We really don't know, but I think it's really important to understand that there are truly some nutritional constituents that you've got to get from your diet, and vitamin C is one of those that we just really need to try and work on.
K2 is another one.
K2, exactly, that we don't make, that we really need to get from our environment, and the B vitamins and so forth either.
And B9 may protect against the heart defects, the congenital heart defects, which means it was inherited, congenital?
Congenital would be inherited, but that's, again, the expression of a gene. Remember, they like to make it sound like you have no control.
Right.
But folate, and, we want to talk about B9 and not get confused with folate and folic acid. We've shared that with you. One of the reasons
that's a very
we didn't
confusing
want,
thing.
I was very insistent on the Primal Edge that we have true folate and fully reduced natural forms of the B vitamins, because the folic acid can actually create a lot of problems. if you can't metabolize it and break it down.
And we're going on a break. I'd like to remind people to pick up our Primal Edge, our daily supplement. Very important to be healthy in today's world, and this is one way to ensure that you're getting all the vitamins, minerals that you need to be healthy and thrive.
So we'll be right back.
Yes.
Well, hey there, welcome back. You know, it's no secret that you are what you eat. We've been talking about how you can eat for a healthier heart.
Yep.
But do you stink? Here's what you should eat less of. Well, this is kind of an interesting article and kind of surprised me. You know, when we think about stinking, we think about the most pungent of foods, you know, garlic and onions and how it might impact our personal aroma. I thought this was kind of interesting, fenugreek, the spice fenugreek, because if you actually eat fenugreek, it actually causes you to emit kind of a maple syrup smell. I like the taste of fenugreek. I think it smells good, the spice. But what's really interesting is the farther we go down here, there's a new study, maybe you can share that with us, Nico, that was published in Evolution and Human Behavior, and it's found that our body odor is more closely tied to our diets than previously thought. And what might seem like common sense that eating healthier will make you smell healthier, there's now scientific proof to back up what your mama probably told you, to eat your fruits and veggies, and it could really have a great impact on how you smell to others around you. And I think that they did a study, and it was conducted by researchers in the Department of Psychology at a university in Sydney, Australia, and they examined the relationship between fruits and vegetable consumption in male participants and the perception of smell of their sweat by female participants. And the clean eating freaks scoot to the edge of your seats because you might be surprised. The female study participants evaluated the sweat samples, and the results, there was a significant association between more pleasing BO smells and higher fruit and vegetable intake. But interestingly, the stinkier diet culprits weren't the garlic, meat, and eggs.
Isn't that interesting?
That one might expect on the flip side. Instead, it was high consumption of carbohydrates that resulted in stronger smelling, less pleasant sweat.
Yeah, the less pleasant sweat are usually the fruits and vegetables. And that it is interesting, and not so much the garlic.
Yeah.
Although I've smelled garlic on people, but it's coming from the mouth. It's not oozing through the skin as much.
Carbs, we thought you were our friends, and for all those years, look how you were doing us wrong. But it did say there was more pleasant BO smells and higher fruit and vegetable intake. There was, but it was the refined carbohydrates, again, these carbs that you can't break down.
That's the ticket right there.
That's the ticket, and if you can't digest it, folks, your body's going to have to break it down and disperse it.
If you're eating sugars, if you're eating cereals, if you're eating any kind of processed or packaged food, you're going to smell worse than not.
Right.
And, you know, the other thing maybe we could hit on is that the deodorants, a lot of them have aluminum, magnesium, things like that in it that you don't really want to expose your very sensitive body areas to, I would think. So I've been using the crystal. Now, I know the crystal doesn't work for some people, too.
Well, you got to wet it. I think a lot of people try and rub it, the crystal salt is a salt stick.
You wet it and you put it under your arms wet. And it works great for me.
What a great way to get minerals, you know, to get a dose of minerals. And folks, one of the best things that you can do is to get rid of the toxic personal care products that we have. We are just inundating our bodies with these toxins, and the body's got to work to get rid of them. Yeah. So, you know. Yeah,
and if you're smelling bad, then that's probably a sign that your diet's not right. So you got to clean up your diet somehow. So start experimenting with different foods that make you smell better.
Right. So it's not the meat and the eggs and so forth that are making you smell bad, and it's not the fruits and vegetables. Those things all help you smell good. It's these carbohydrates that your body just can't deal with.
And I would say, too, if you go to McDonald's and eat their hamburger and stuff, you probably make them smell good either.
Well, and what's all right?
Yeah.
Because of the toxins in those foods, and you're eating those so-called breads and so forth.
Yep.
So we are what we eat. So let's make some good choices. And we hope you have a wonderful day and make good choices to stay healthy for you and your family.
Yeah, we got another
good show.
Yep, next show we got lots of stuff to talk about. So thanks a lot for sticking around, folks. Please pick up some Primal Edge. Please remember to get my newsletter, 2 issues a month. And the next one coming out on the 3rd Tuesday, which is next Tuesday, folks. We'll see you again.
See you next time.
You're watching Tiger TV.